We are all here today to talk to three young but extremely accomplished and interesting designers that have worked with us on Emirati Expressions, which is the exhibition on view here at Manarat Al Saadiyat. The exhibition closes in a couple of weeks, so I do encourage for those of you who have not been to see the exhibition to go see it if you have not done so already. And in terms of the design for the exhibition, it's interesting to note for those of you who don't know, we worked with Emirati designers throughout the planning of the exhibition. So from various different elements, which I'll talk a little bit about as I go through my introductions. But I do want to welcome the three speakers we have here today and give you a little bit of background on each of them. To my very far right, we have Firas Bardan. He holds a bachelor's degree in graphic design from the University of Dubai. He's worked with high-end companies managing their design and branding. And for Emirati Expressions, Firas worked with Mohammed Mandi on the development of the brand identity and was responsible for the promotional campaign and the design of visual elements for the exhibition. Firas currently works as a graphic designer and brand guardian for TDIC, Cultural Department. So he's a colleague. I'm very happy to have him as a colleague, whilst also maintaining his art practice, mainly in digital montage and manipulation. Next to Firas, we have Hadia Badri, born in 1988 in Tehran. She lives and works in Dubai. Hadia Badri studied visual communications and design at the American University of Sharjah. Throughout her education, Hadia was particularly engaged in expressions in typography, photography, and diverse media from concrete to plexiglass and resin. In 2010, Hadia Badri and two of her contemporaries, Reem Hassan and Hala Al-Ani, founded Mobius Design Studio, to be exact. The studio is a collective based in Tashkil, a resource center for contemporary artists in the United Arab Emirates. The ethos behind Mobius Design Studio is to tackle design based on the notion of experimental processes, as well as conceptual and formal investigations. I should also note that Hadia was one of the artists in Emirati Expressions, and same with Salam Al-Qasimi, who is to my immediate right. Salam lives and works in Sharjah. He completed his bachelor's in multimedia design at the American University of Sharjah. After graduation, Salam freelanced for several companies, including large multinational firms and smaller startup firms. During that time, he experimented with print-based and time-based mediums, interactive design, and Arabic typography. In 2006, he founded Fikra Design Studio that specialized in designing bilingual typography, Arabic and English, for Emirati brands. In 2011, Salam graduated with an MFA in graphic design from the Rhode Island School of Design, during which he also served as a teaching assistant and instructor. His thesis was an investigation into the Arabish, a term that he coined, Arabic and English culture of the United Arab Emirates, mixed, combined, and this cultural analysis forms the basis of his photographic work, some of which you will see in the exhibition. Before we go into each of them has sort of pulled together sort of a body of work, both their own and the works of others, to give us a kind of overview of design in the UAE at this moment from their perspective. So of course, this is not going to be comprehensive, but it will be three different points of view in terms of what we have to offer here in the UAE. But I did want to quickly show you some of the design that was involved in the making of Emirati Expressions, and that we were very proud to be able to work with these artists to create. What you're looking at here is the catalog for Emirati Expressions. We worked with Faiza Mubarak, and if you know Faiza's work, she does make sculptural works that are in the form of books. So this was an exciting project for us to create a catalog that could double as an artwork. Inside the book, we worked with Mobius Design, which is Hadia's company. along with her partners. And they were our partners in designing the catalog itself. So the interior of it, the layout of the text and the image was the work of Hadia and Mobius Design Studio. We also worked with Sheikha Wafa Al Maktoum, who has a company, FN Design Studio, and they worked on the brochure, which is available outside for free. The brochure was more of an experimental style for us. We typically do a sort of a very, very informative but standard brochure design. But with this, we wanted to work with an artist, and we sort of branched out. And the brochure itself actually doubles as an issue of Amour magazine, which is a magazine that FN Design produces. Unlimited edition, but for us, they did this special brochure design. And every page comes out as a separate poster. So it's a nice sort of takeaway for the exhibition. And of course, we have the logo for Emirati Expressions, which Firas worked on with Mohammed Mandi, who of course is a very well-known calligrapher here in the UAE. And we had wanted him to join us today, but unfortunately he wasn't able to join us. So we are very happy to have Firas, though, who worked with him, and to talk a little bit about his work as we go. But I'll pass this on to you.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
So hi, everybody. This is the logo that we created for Emirati Expression, the exhibition. I worked with Mohammed Mandi. We wanted like a very special theme for this for the second version of Emirati Expression, and he wanted some. I actually told him that we wanted something that could be that can portray stuff that could be coming from our culture, which is the like the sailors that we have in the in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and so you can see the lines. They can keep on going and forming like a shape of a tree and a sail. So he wanted to show that we're developing. This is like this project is bringing a group of people that are growing and emerging. So this is the concept behind the logo. And it was very challenging because he was very precise that his calligraphy needs to be like he's got those attention to details that it has to be exactly the same as what he did. So it was a very interesting project, and then I had to roll out like the promotional marketing campaign. We did a lot of we produced a lot of collateral and a lot of items that had this logo, and thankfully it was very successful. I'll move on to.
Yeah.
This is one of my work that I created for Hod magazine, which is basically an Emirati newsletter. It talks about everything that we have to do in terms of culture, like exhibitions and art fairs and everything that we do in TDIC as a cultural department. And this issue was very much dedicated for the inauguration of Zayed National Museum. So I had to recreate that image. It was one of the very vintage images of Sheikh Zayed, and I worked on it in terms of recreating it, and I'm putting a different composition of what it really is. And again, thank God, there was a very positive feedback on this artwork. This is an artwork that I've created in 2010. It's it's named Untitled, but to me it was more like the first meaning that I wanted to give it. The first name that I wanted to give that artwork is the Lost Identity. It basically talks about my personal life, where I'm actually Emirati, and my mother is Syrian as well. So sometimes I live in my own country, and I'm very, I can't imagine myself living anywhere else. But sometimes you can see and feel the cultural, shock, not cultural shock, but cultural difference between my own life and what is out there, and like dealing with an everyday people. So it was just like a lost identity for me. So this is the artwork.
So I have a question about this piece. Would you say that this was an artwork or a design piece?
It's a design piece.
It's a design piece.
Yeah, I mean, it's just putting things together. It's like taking different sort of images and then recreate them in a different way. So to me, it's a more of an artistic kind of design, because for me, I do differentiate between art and design. Okay. So it is an artistic.
Okay. I think that's a question that we'll get to later on as well, because I think that the interesting division or no division between art and design is something that each of you might touch upon in your presentations.
This is a project that I've worked with a famous Lebanese fashion designer. His name is Zuhair Murad. I did this for my capstone, and I had to recreate all of the images of the models, basically. And the concept here is basically I wanted to have to show the first glimpse of the first thoughts that went into his head before designing whatever dress he was working on. So this is just like a first illusion, and just a quick glimpse of that time. And it was a very successful project as well. And eventually I had a press ad that was released and used in different magazines and newspapers in the UAE. Those are, again, just like self-portraits of myself, where I recreate the image. I have a certain image that was photographed, by someone, and then I would like to have my own kind of fantasy into recreating the different colors and different usage of the image. It's just like I would like to run away from the real stuff and create my own kind of version. And this is what I like to do with images. And this is another self-portrait. Again, it's very blurry here, and that's actually the artwork itself.
What is the process for this piece?
It's taking a lot of images and then just start playing with it on my computer. I have a very special relationship with my computer, and just keep on exploring ideas and how can I be able to connect with the artwork that I've produced. Okay. So and this is named Untitled as well. And
yeah. Is this working?
Is yours working?
I think it is.
Is it?
Speak.
Yeah.
Speak up. Speak up.
Is this working? Yes. Okay. Okay. So my compilation of works, I did not choose Mobius Studios' work or our work or my own personal work, but I decided to take this talk as an opportunity to extensively search into designers here in the UAE and see what I would find. And before we start, I just want to say that Mobius and myself, we believe in experimentation as a methodology, and sort of taking something through a long process. But sometimes working as a designer, I think your work sort of, you don't have time to produce your own work, and it becomes sort of more your clients and less you. And when that happens, the main aim is to be efficient and deliver work on time. And for that to happen, you only have two choices. You're either efficient or you're poor. You're not really working. So these quick solutions lead to sometimes, often, superficial work. And I think that's a lot of what I found. But the work I'm going to show right now is some of which I thought were observational and have meaning behind them. And I chose artwork and design work because I don't see a line between the two. And I just want to show you that there's a lot to be done here. So I'll start. The first video I'm going to show is called Ajwa, and it's a 3D weather system. And you'll notice that as it moves, based on place, you'll see every place's landmark. Is this working? The second thing I want to show is a set of posters by Emir Burbich. He's a professor at the American University of Sharjah. These music posters were made between 2006 and 2008. And I think it's important to note that these posters are very much contextual. And we'd recognize some of the things in there because we were students in the university. So we'd have music events, and these were basically invites. And I'd like to talk about this one with bow ties. Our history professor would arrange most of these events, and he had he used to wear different bow ties every day to class. And so Emir Burbich wanted to reference him. And so these were an immediate reference to Professor Martin Giesen, which we thought was remarkable, really. And jazz at lunch. The third thing I want to talk about is Dubai Graphic Encyclopedia by a studio called Brussels Sprout. And this is a visual compilation of Dubai showing dress, transport, signage. And their idea behind this is to publish a new encyclopedia every year in order to show traces of the change that happens throughout the years. Simple Public Figures by Ali Jabbar. I thought these were noteworthy because he's using very simple two-dimensional forms to produce recognizable figures. And you'd have to observe certain traits in a person's face to draw these. And in some of them, there's a bit of humor and irony. Okay, moving to Tariq Al-Ghassain. Whose work is also exhibited. He spent the past 10 years exploring what it means to be a figure situated in a landscape. And what's interesting for me is that he goes to the very much similar places, the desert, over and over again, but tries to communicate the idea of home and place through the same space, basically. And through the chronology of his works from the beginning to the end, it's fascinating how he utilizes the space to show physical boundary. Hal al-Ani, a typology of houses, Mobius's very own Hal al-Ani. These works were exhibited in the Sharjah Biennale and made to the permanent collection. What she did was she classified her photographs into categories that highlight architectural style, Gothic, Roman, for example, in order to understand patterns that map the city and its people. So she wanted to understand why a certain person would use a certain style versus the other, and how that is juxtaposed with the environment it's situated in. Third, Lamia Gargash's Present series. She documented abandoned or soon to be abolished places here in the UAE. And what she wanted to show is the prevalence of identity within these unwanted places. I'm done. Thanks.
Yeah, is it working? Hello, check. All right. All right, so I'll start by showing you, I'm going to show you some of my own personal work and some of the works of other Emirati designers. This is my own. This is Fikra Design Studio. And recently, I rebranded and redesigned the logo. And what I did was, I started off by, because it's a design studio, I didn't, I thought the logo needed to be very geometric, very self-explanatory. And, I think Paul Rand, when he designed the IBM logo, he said, a lot of people started putting meaning and definition to the logo. And but he said, no, what I did was I basically put the lines so that I wanted to create this a contrast between, and there was no reason, there was no, it wasn't because of, the wires and technological, etc. that people started saying about the logo. It was literally just because of using design principles to create an identity. And so I thought, for Fikra, why don't I just create a logo out of geometric shapes. However, when I started designing the logo, I was also designing the furniture of the studio itself. And the studio, the furniture was, the way I designed it was very circular. And so at the same time, simultaneously, I started designing the logo for it. And then I did Fikra, but then I was trying to find a secondary typeface, a font that would actually match the Arabic. I couldn't, so I decided to create my own. So the actual typeface that you see at the bottom is the one that I designed for Fikra. Now, in the meantime, I'm actually creating, almost done with the Arabic version of this font as well. So, Tashkil is another logo. And, the stuff that I'm going to show you today is some of the things that I think, or maybe sort of like a method that is, or the design that you see here, the solutions are always hybrid. And it's also a continuation of my thesis thinking, which I'll show you a little bit. But this Tashkil is an artist hub in Dubai. And so the brief was to actually create a logo where Arabic and English is read at the same time. So I wanted to create something, so I literally drew the calligraphy, used calligraphy to draw the logo type. This is a poster for a pitch, a recent pitch. And the reason I'm showing this is because I'm trying to show you how in the UAE and a lot of the Arab world, we use two languages. We use Arabic and English. you know, and I think it becomes much more difficult than just creating a poster with one language, because then you're going to have to consider legibility. You're going to have to consider, you know, how is the Arabic font look like the English font? How is, you know, how is the whole composition working with so much text, because you have both languages. But anyway, why I'm showing this is because I'm trying to show you the hybridity of design in the region. This is part of in my thesis, part of my thesis investigation, and my thesis at Rhode Island School of Design was really commenting and researching and investigating the mainstream Emirati culture. And what does that mean? You know, what is the mainstream Emirati culture? And I was looking at 3 different categories. One was dress, the other one was language, and the third one was urban landscape. And how all 3 of them are becoming this hybrid. And especially for the mainstream Emirati youth, you know, like we use Arabic and English almost all the time. You know, and I'm not necessarily saying it's good or bad. I'm just commenting on it, saying, documenting it as well. But this is a study. What I did was I scanned in a Kandora, and also because I was there in Rhode Island, you know, that the effect of the American culture on me, and you know, me being an Emirati there, trying to stay, you know, stick to my roots, I guess. So in this study, what I did was I scanned in a Kandora jeans and shirt on a tabloid size scanner. And I added the word Arabi in Arabic, and I added Western in English. And what I started doing is that I overlaid them on top of each other and started adding and removing layers representing the cultural transformation. And I think, you know, part of this series, if we really look at the culture in the UAE, we're going to find, you know, a community of people in the society that is more Arab, and a society, or more of them are like a hybrid, and some of them are even a little bit more Western. And you know, so when I was in Rhode Island, I was trying to find an Arabish culture in Rhode Island, and you know, when an Arabic and English is used at the same time, and because you know how in the UAE, a lot of the times the logos and the identities, almost all the time, has to be in Arabic and English. And most of the time, the Arabic would always look like the English and not the other way around. So what I did was I thought, you know, how can I create this, try to reverse that in Rhode Island? So what I did was I found a mosque. I actually found 6 mosques in Rhode Island. And so I decided to brand them. And I'm not actually showing the branding here, but what I did was masjid in Arabic and masjid in English. And you know how, you know, in the UAE, Arabic is our first language, and the second language, or the commerce language, is English. There, it's the religious language is Arabic in the Muslim community, and their first language is English. So I thought it would only be convenient to not only to brand it, but to actually retransform the space. And because the mosque was right in front of a school, and because of that, like, it was very intimidating, you know, the mosque looked very scary and in front of the school. So we wanted to invite people to come and explore. So what I did was, I created, there was a rooftop that no one was using. So I decided to have the rooftop as a courtyard. And what I'm showing is furniture that I designed for it. And the furniture is actually made out of type. And the type is, there's English and Arabic, and the words are made up of the 5 pillars of Islam. So what I did in this one is that the furniture you can sit on and, you know, use, but also it becomes an interactive furniture where people could come and start putting together letters, starting creating words, مثلا as-salah, which is prayer in Arabic. And you know, I thought, you know, I showed this to the mosque and they were super excited. And they were like, yeah, you know, maybe this is going to change how people view us. Maybe this is, you know, this is going to invite the kids from the school to come and play around with the furniture that we have. So this was one of the solutions. And I'm going to show you an animation now, and it's based on the Arabic language, or the way we speak and type. I think Arabic was actually, it started when ASCII, which is the American Standard Code for Information Interchange, was the only way of texting or writing on ASCII devices on computers. And so, you know, there was only English. So different languages such as, you know, Greek, Persian, Japanese, Chinese, all of them had to adapt Latin graphemes to communicate in their own language, as well as Arabic. So for example, for us, especially in the UAE, we are still using that on Unicode devices. So we would type, for example, 7A SHARA, which is hashra, which is, you know, noisy. But, you know, we'd use 7 for the ha, the 3 for the the 2 for the hamza, and the 5 for the kha. And so we'd use it, you know, it became mainstream. So you'd find it on billboards. I actually found it on a billboard. I was like, wow, you know, this is incredible. A lot of the other languages, the Greek, and they stopped using it on Unicode devices because now they could actually use their own language. We continue to use it until nowadays. So what I did in this animation was because Arabic started because of technological drawbacks, I created the 3D model of the Arabic letter and its equivalent English numeral. And I wrote a script on the computer where I would let the computer automatically morph the letters into each other. And what I found was exciting shapes that started coming out, which really did reflect the architecture in Dubai. So I thought, you know, why don't I actually place those forms in Dubai? But then there was also, when I was creating this, I was like, oh, the sound didn't make sense. So I had to add oud music with, which is our, with electronic music. And so I had to edit that as well. And this is animation. Could you also play another animation, the second animation, just in case it doesn't work there? So part of my investigation, my thesis, my work was documented in this book, which is Arabic, and the book actually starts from the Arabic side because, you know, I'm an Arab, and I thought it was really pretty interesting because it's going to be in the RISD library. And it's the only book that starts from right to left, and I thought it was convenient. And also because in the book, it was actually written in both English and Arabic. And I wanted to show that there's more Arabic or Emirati influence in the way I was thinking about my work. And the Western is an addition to my experience there. You know, it's part of my experience there, and etc. So, yeah, you can talk to me as soon as we're done with the panel if you wanted to see the book. But here I'll show you an animation of the book as well, so that I could show it online. But also these are some of the projects, some of the animations, and yeah, and going back to design. You know, I think for me, design is right now especially nowadays, and especially even in the UAE, I think design is becoming broad. And I think the definition of design really covers a lot of different aspects. And I think for me, it was very important to explore different kind of designs, not just graphic design. So I was using video, I was using interactive, I started doing interactive installations, I started working with architects, etc. And so for this one, this is part of a project that we did, part of the Fikra Design Studio. And I think around 2008, we got so bored with commercial projects, and so there was a Creek Art Fair in Bastakia. So we got a house, like a little room, and we had 2 months to create something for that room. So I decided to tell everyone who was working, 6 people were working at Fikra at that time, to start making their own projects and just go crazy. So this was actually a piece of furniture that was created in 1 month and then manufactured and everything, and with an interior designer called Rowena Albanna. And it was part of it. And actually, this got sold out within a few days, so it was pretty cool. This was my first attempt in design furniture. I don't think it's super cool now, but just showing you something. But I think what I wanted to show you is Khalid Sha'far's work. And going back to the idea of having this hybrid culture and this, as Emiratis, we are constantly commenting on identity and constantly thinking about how is our work going to be different? How can we bring our own culture to this? So Khalid Sha'far is a prominent Emirati furniture designer, and this is his latest collection. And you can see some of the Emirati elements in those, and what he did, especially with the hangers, for example, he was influenced by the palm tree, and so he created the hanger out of palm trees. And I thought it was super, super cool. And not only that, but he's showing this furniture elsewhere around the world. And his in New Zealand now, and he's showcasing it there. He showed it in Tokyo, and he got very good feedback. And just because it's new, we have our own culture, and and he got inspired by his own culture, and he started creating this furniture. Thamania is a fashion brand. I'm showing you 2 things here. The identity was created by us at Fikra. Thamania is actually an Emirati fashion brand, which is now selling at Altier New York and Barney's New York. His first collection is completely sold out. What he's doing, he's only doing his collection for men. He's a protege of Michelle Lamy, who's, I don't know if you know, the wife of Rick Owens. But he wanted to create his fashion based on kandoras, based on Emirati kandora. And what is very interesting is that how people started accepting it in the West. People are, he had, it was sold out to Barney's, in New York. It was fascinating. You have kandoras in Barney's now. So, you would find, and I think Lenny Kravitz was wearing one. So yeah, super cool. So what I'm trying to show you is that yes, we have our own culture, and it's becoming this hybrid. It's becoming this hybrid between the West and and Arabic or Emirati. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to each of you for pulling together those presentations. I think that it gave all of us a kind of really interesting taste of what is out there in terms of Emirati design and art. I want to since we just talked about it, I want to quickly talk about what you just showed. How do I go back? Okay, oh, I have to go all the way through. Because I was just thinking about the fashion designer you showed and how interesting it is that through design, you have this, as you were saying, a kind of hybrid and kind of a mixing of cultures, but you also have a kind of outreach and a kind of spreading of Arabic culture. So it's not just about Western culture or about a non-Arab culture kind of coming in, but it's also about an Arab culture going out. And I wanted to know what you thought about that in terms of your own practice, since you yourself, you've studied it at RISD, you've been in New York, you've had both experiences of living here and of living abroad.
You know, I think part of my thesis, when I was doing my thesis, I would say 80% of it was educating. And, you know, I don't know if that's what you meant by outreach.
Well, in terms of the culture going further than here, like, you know, so it's
Yeah.
Arabic culture, but being spread there and
Right.
being shared there, and you know, now they're responding and they're wearing kanduras and, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was, we're in the UAE, I think we're in a phase or a point where we're trying to define ourselves and we're trying to define our designs. And I think we're not, you know, we're not there yet. We're not, we can't define it yet, but we are, there are a lot of us now. There are more and more to come. And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to communicate to the outer world that we exist and we have our own identities, but we are global as well at the same time. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer that question, but I think that's, yeah.
No, I think that's hitting the point. I think that the culture here is very mixed, very global, very international, and that creates a kind of hybrid culture here. But I think that eventually you're going to find sort of that hybridity reaching beyond these borders, so that when you go and study at RISD, or when, you know, Hadia starts, you know, through Mobius starting to work for foreign companies and, you know, that kind of thing, then the design ethos that is being developed here will go abroad.
Absolutely, yeah, I think so. And, you know, adding to that, I was the first Arab to be at the RISD MFA program. As soon as I graduated, another Lebanese person is in now. And my experience was that at the end of my final presentation, a woman came to me and she's like, Salim, you know, I'm ashamed of the prejudice that I had before, you know, on your culture. I feel now I'm one step closer to you just because I'm much more familiar about what the UAE is. You know, if they didn't even know what the UAE is. And I think that's part of design. You know, I think as designers, we are responsible to try to communicate where we're from, try to communicate in general, but also, you know, as an Emirati and as a designer, I need to communicate where I'm from, what I do, how to solve problems, and contribute to the creation of the identity of the UAE. You know, I think that's maybe a little bit big to say, but it does. It's a contribution, even if it's a small contribution, but it does do something. And in the West, Thamania has introduced the UAE culture, you know? Yes, it's a hybrid between the West and some of it is. Some of it is just strictly Kandora. But it's called Thamania. It's an Arabic brand. And the name of the designer is Ahmed Abdurrahman, who's from Sharjah. You know, and slowly, I think, one step at a time, our culture and the UAE is becoming more familiar, not only by the tallest tower that we have, but also by, you know, the designs that we create, by our inherited culture, more than our physical culture, you know? And I think that's very important. That's a very important aspect, I think. I hope I'm making sense.
Hadia, you
Yeah, I think.
itching to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot necessarily relate design to. I cannot say Emirati design. I can't. I think design is more of a global thing, and design is about the process. And I don't know, I'm not trying to communicate where I'm from or try to show an identity per se. I think, but I think it all depends on producing worthwhile design and how you use a certain process to feed into your work.
Sorry, can I? But don't you think that inevitably, like, the design that you do, that you create, is definitely influenced by the culture and where you're from?
يعني, it not, it is, but not I'm not sure I can say Emirati design.
I totally agree with you, and I think we had that
Yeah,
a little bit at the
we
beginning.
did.
And I don't think we can actually define Emirati design
And
because it's
and I
relatively
don't
new.
think we should.
I think it's more about like the environment that we lived in. We're very much influenced by,
But so is everyone else everywhere else.
Can you say Japanese design?
You can, but there's a history.
Right.
I can say Swiss design because that references the typographic style that was there in the 1950s, that was developed in the 1950s. But way before that, there were other things happening.
But don't you think
This
that
is
we're
fairly young.
at a time where we're
creating
trying to define our, you know what I mean? Like I think we cannot say that there is an Emirati design.
We cannot.
But it is safe to say that we're trying to develop that. We don't know it, and I think with time, there is going to be a collective expression of what it is an Emirati design. And I think now there is probably a collective expression of what Arab design is. I think, and especially with this hybridity, and I think, if you look at Lebanon, designers in Lebanon, typographers, and how typography has become this subject that is so important for us here as graphic designers, thinking about how Arabic and English work together.
Yes.
And I think that, that exists elsewhere as well, but for us, what makes it unique is that it's Arabic. You know what I mean? And yeah.
I mean, I look at it in the sense that these are fundamental basics of design. And this is my approach to it. And when we're starting a project, whether it's personal or, from the studio, I think the direction it goes is based on, yes, what the client's needs and how well you can communicate what they want to say, function and form, good form. And yeah.
And I think, sorry, but I think also, adding to that, the process in which it, and I think for us here as, as designers, we don't have an Emirati or Arabic reference point. We use our, I think maybe more Islamic and art, but in terms of design, if we say, for example, typographic design, it is relatively new. And I'm talking about typography and not calligraphy. And I think...
Can you clarify that distinction, though? Because I was thinking in my head that calligraphy would be a progenitor for contemporary typography. I mean, it is...
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. But I think also, maybe I'm talking more about digital type and how type has become nowadays, and I think now it's relevant that you have Starbucks, Arabic and English. You can see how the Arabic is an imitation of the English, and it's not really very inspired by our own, traditional calligraphic, what's it called?
And I think these things raise other issues
yeah.
that are, for me, I think this is more rewarding to discuss and things I like to observe and look at, like the subway logo, for example. I mean, it works in English, but you just can't force it into the Arabic.
And especially FedEx,
And FedEx. I mean, these things are... Talking about these things are worthwhile.
So subway does not read subway in Arabic? It's
It
just,
does read subway, but it's very... The arrow is very much forced.
Yeah.
And look at the last letter, which is the ya. It's an imitation of the S, really. It's an S. And it doesn't... but I think also if we really try to define design, I think each designer and every designer would have their own definition of what design is. But there is an overall understanding, which is design is about process, design is about research, investigation, and form. And I think, and then the other layers of what design is fall, such as, for me, I think at least for me, in most of my designs, they're both in Arabic and English. And there's a lot of inspiration between, yeah, I think.
One thing I wanted to also go on with this conversation about is, you had said that there is no specific design, say, from the Emirates or the UAE, at least not yet, according to Salam. But would you say that there is a kind of developing, I know we didn't want to talk about architecture, but in terms of the cityscape and the urban design and the way buildings look and the way that our visual world looks here in the UAE, would you say that that might be something that's a developed distinctive to this place?
Okay.
I'm just looking at these buildings. I think this artist is onto something when she starts to.
She's definitely onto
Yeah.
something. Yes. The problem with these, and I think what she's trying to. I mean, it's her way of getting to know the environment around her, right? And with these houses, it's like the facade is trying to say something. It's communicating something. We don't know if the person who inhabits the house is aware of this and why they choose a house to look Gothic, for example. Does it have to do with the messages it's sending or the associations? Does it connote status or power, or does one look more luxurious to the other? I mean, relatively according to them. I mean, regarding this project, but I don't, regarding the cityscape, again, based on my understanding, is that traditional architecture is more, it was site-specific. And so just walking in Bastakia yesterday, for me, I think because it was site-specific and it had to do with how air circulates, it's denser, and which makes it more walkable, and the distance is shorter. So they're functional, I think. But walking in Sheikh Zayed Road, for example, I mean, you can pick any building and place it somewhere else in the world, and the function wouldn't change. The purpose is for it to be inhabitable, and that's it.
So for you, the distinctiveness is not, say, the cityscape, but more the Bastakia area.
But even Bastakia area is a hybrid, by the way. The wind towers are not originally Emirati. They're Persian or Iranian. But it's a hybrid. But now, we can say it's Emirati, and the reason is because we have taken something else and we have our own and put it together and made our own sort of unique architecture. But we also have, the forts, the old Emirati forts, and those are specifically, traditionally, maybe Emirati, and not necessarily Emirati, but the Sahel Oman, we call it, like that whole region, Oman. And I think there was this article by David Mitchell in the Bidun book, and he's a professor at AUS, and he was talking about how houses in the UAE specifically, but also maybe the region, how they're gated, and that is unique to the region. Gated housing, and how it becomes more private. And if you look at, going back to the Bastakia, there are no gates. They're houses, and they're less private. The privacy is in the actual house, is in the actual structure. But but nowadays we started becoming more. The architecture has become more private, I think. If we're talking about housing, but if we talk about exactly like Sheikh Zayed Road, it's like anywhere else in the world,
And again, architecture, design, and art, they have this ability to adapt to function or not, technology or not, content, context, meaning, being commercial or not. So going back to the question of, I don't think there's a line between, for me, art and design. I think they're both the same.
Well, it's a good question to think about because with both of you, you're both artists in the exhibition and you're both designers, and with Mobius working with us on several of our projects, but also for us as an artist and as a designer. Or would you, how do you define yourself? Would you define yourself as both?
I'm a designer because I spend most of my time working on design as a, in my line, it's more commercial. So to me, art is something that you can actually create and to engage with people on an emotional level. But when it comes to design, it's as commercially speaking, it's that you need to actually inform them. You need to educate them about a certain thing, and for them to actually be able to decide whether they want to buy this product or go to this place or so on and so forth. So for me, I do differentiate between the two. They have different criterias, and they're judged by different criteria. They have different audiences. They have, they're created differently. So this is the way I look at it.
So would you say that design maybe has a goal or an end
Yes.
in mind when it's being created, whereas maybe art doesn't?
But both can do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think both can do that, but I think there is a fine line. I think there is a distinction between art and design. Hence, the actual creating a word, a terminology that actually segregates or separates the two. But I think. Let me just give you an example of my work that's in Emirati expressions, the here and there. That in the context that it is in now, they are, I think, art. But once I take it out of that, and if I put it in this book, it's going to be a graphic design project. The reasons are because, one, I'm playing with typography, which is wording, and the other thing is because it becomes part of a larger documentation or like the process. So I think, and also, I think commercializing it, sometimes. But I think there is a fine line, and I think that line is blurred. And that's why I think, Hadi, and Hadi is absolutely right. And I think, part of our education also, I think at AUS we graduated from American University of Sharjah, and there was visual communication. It wasn't graphic design. And visual communication, the program itself was very much, it was also a mixture of what art and design is. But I think if we look at, for example, RISD and we say graphic design and we talk about art, then they would completely be like, they'll be scared. They'll, you know what I mean. But they'll freak out. Like they would say, no, art is not graphic design. Graphic design is not art, and the reasons are, they'll have their own reasons. Yeah, but I think they're different for every designer and every artist. They would have their own definitions, and that I think the definition, the line between art and design is never defined. It is always blurred, and it could be one, it could be two, it could be. So yeah,
I think that might be the most interesting thing about the field itself is that as you said, everyone has a different definition of it, and the two. You can interchange between the two. You can meld the two. You can define either being one or the other, but.
But what is architecture? Architecture. Do we say architecture is design, or do you say architecture is architecture, or do you say architecture is art?
That's a good question.
And do we say like product design and furniture design? Product design. Is it art? Is it? And there could be. I mean, they could be. They're all influenced. They're under one umbrella.
Yeah.
But they're like they're a hybrid umbrella.
Art. Design is a form of art. It is. I mean, you need to understand art to be able to be creative, and from there you would know how to create your design so that it can have a certain function. Like in architecture, you need to understand how, to make something look in a certain way, you need to know the history, the art history in terms of architecture. This is it's art, but again, when it comes to design, there's like certain functionality that you need to understand create that design. So.
Well, I want to thank you all, but I also want to open it up to the audience because I have a feeling that there may be designers or interested people in design in the audience. So if anyone has questions for these speakers, feel free. I think we have a mic that can be made available. And just wait for the mic to come in so that we can catch it on film.
I just wanted to ask, Hadaya, you were talking before about sort of the function of Bastakir, the architecture that was used there, the use of shading and the use of material to sort of as a natural cooling and things like that. And I suppose to all of you really, I'd be keen to know, what do you think the function of good design is? What do you think, what's the point of this? What's the point of having good design in a city? What does it mean to have good typography? How does it change the experience of a city? Or of a project?
Wow, that's a toughie. I'm not sure I know how to answer that. But I think it's for everything. Well, a building, let's say, the more it responds to my needs as a consumer, and the more functional it is, and the more, the easier it is for me to, I don't know, inhabit it maybe. I'm not sure I'm able to answer that. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
That's a toughie.
But I think then we start. Maybe we can talk about if form follows function, or whether whether the if we look at traditional maybe architecture with floral patterns, for example, those elements are not necessarily functional. They don't. Their function is solely aesthetic, and that's it. But they don't necessarily serve a function. I think nowadays, because of modernization, the concept of modernization started doing is that anything that does not serve a purpose, just remove it. And this is, I think, what's happening. But for example, in Bastakia, I think it's a mixture of both. There are those patterns, there are the aesthetic elements to it, but also there are functional elements like the wind tower, the barjil. And the barjil becomes a functional element that was added in to create a better, to enhance people's lives, living those homes. I'm not sure if I answered that question, but.
Sorry, can you say that into the mic? Thank you.
It's just, I suppose, just asking, why do we have good typography? Why is that necessary? Why is it good to have a design ethos and design mentality in urbanism and when we build cities?
I'll give you an example of road signs, for example. In America, recently, they changed the typeface, the font of road signs from, can't remember what, to highway, right? Was it? I think they changed it to highway. It's a font called highway. It was created strictly and only to be used on road signage. And the reason is they wanted to create a font that is that for people driving would read it faster. And so there is pure, purposeful typographic graphic design used in roads signage. That's an example. But also, I think for us here in the UAE, for example, Arabic and English, how can we create something that would not look busy, that would look, easy to read? And something that'll be faster to read. And this goes also, it becomes technical as well, and how you can read it on the web. And there are the letters, if it had bigger spaces, that means it's easier for you to read, etc. And so, as graphic designers, we have to make those small little choices that the end consumer would probably never know, but we're just making life easier for them and more beautiful, I guess.
I think there was a question over on this side.
Something that really stood out to me was the incorporation of Arabic into the masjids. And it's just so interesting because it would be something new and fresh and appealing to people. So my question is that something that's important to you, the aspect of interaction of your art with society?
Absolutely. I think my art and design needs to serve a purpose. And for it to serve a purpose, I need to have a bigger audience. But it depends on the context. So for example, in the mosque itself, the context was the mosque. It was in America, it was in Rhode Island, it was strictly in Providence, and it was also for the school next to it. So that was my audience, you know, and I tried to create a nicer space, less intimidating, something that would probably communicate that Islam is not terrorism, you know. But yeah, you know, and I think as designers, it becomes sometimes we solve problems, but sometimes we create problems to solve, and I think. I think here there was a problem that I was trying to solve. Yeah, I hope I'm making sense. But
How did that project end, by the way? Did they end up taking?
no, they didn't have enough budget, but they definitely kept it in the files. I'm not. Then again, this one, the actual shape of the building, completely transformed it. I don't know if I can. Maybe I can show it to you later, but the actual building itself, I'm not an architect, but I try to create something that is aesthetically beautiful. I showed it to architects, they're like, oh, maybe you should change this, maybe you do this. But for me, it was, and most of my projects that I was doing my thesis were initial investigations and proposals, perhaps. And they're all documented in this book, to give more of a documentation of my thinking and what I came up with. So I think for this one, I went to the Imam at the end of, and what's also interesting about this project was the mosque, the mosques in Providence, they have this charity thing where they not only help Muslims, but they try to raise funds to make Providence itself, the city, a better place. So they go to schools, and the city itself became. They saw what they started doing to the people, and helping, etc. So the city itself started making Islam a little bit more comfortable, I guess. Muslims more comfortable in Providence. Comfortable probably is not a good word, but they can. They have easier access to things, such as, for example, they had a huge prayer in a park, and no one was telling them no. You know what I mean? Like, so when I went to the Imam, I asked him, I was like, what do you think of this project? And he said, this is great, and I think we should do this, but we don't have enough budget for it now. I think our priority now is to raise money for Providence. I think if we get someone that is willing to invest money in this mosque, then yeah, sure, why not? And by the way, there are 6 mosques, so I had to do this same process for all 6 mosques. There's one beautiful mosque also. This was already a building that just looked like a cube, but there was another mosque that was built as a mosque. It's beautiful. In the middle of Providence, you'd see like the Minara, and it was gorgeous. But anyway.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question, so... Sorry, okay, there.
Yeah, this is a question more about product design, furniture design in the Emirates. I studied abroad, and I used to study here before if I went to study abroad. And the impression I got was, for the young generation, designers growing up here, studying and coming back to work, I guess, I feel there's a lack of, shall we say, the productive phase, where you don't have companies producing things. It's more of a consumer society rather than a productive society. And my question is, do you guys foresee that in, I don't know, the next 5, 10 years that the Emirates will be producing its own furniture, its own fashion, clothing in-house, let's say?
Do you want to answer that?
I don't know if I can answer that, but I can definitely say that it depends on every person, the direction which your work goes. I think the main goal is, for us at least, to sustain ourselves and do work that allows us to sustain ourselves, and then dedicate a big part of our time to producing work that's our own, that's more us and less our clients. I cannot predict the future, but I can definitely say there's more interest, and I think people feel that I think design is more approachable.
I think, I think design is relatively new in the UAE, not like, unlike art. And if we're talking about now, if we're segregating both, if we're trying to differentiate, I think in 2007, there was the International Design Forum that started, that was in Dubai. The International Design Forum was a huge success in trying to create this awareness about design. And then it stopped. Now in March, there's the Design Days Dubai, where you have galleries that come from all around the world that will showcase the work and the products, and you've got designers also from the region who would be there to talk about to showcase their stuff. But I think this question and this scenario is one that I was discussing with a lot of colleagues of mine and people in the UAE, and I think one of the main reason is education. We do not have a product design discipline here, or furniture design. If we talk about furniture design, it'll be integrated into interior design. But specifically furniture design, we don't have. Product design, we don't have. And so there's the American University of Sharjah now, they have a minor in product design. And I think they're trying to create something. But I think and like other majors like graphic design and things like that, before that, the universities had to have the courage to actually create such a program and assume it'll be successful. And yes, we are a consumer market, we're not, and I think for that to change, we need to facilitate education in terms of, having proper product design classes, courses, having, I think, more even a database that would tell people that, oh look, we have this this factory that would help students or people to create furniture, and there are. I found this place in Sharjah that it's a factory that has its own studio, and it's trying to find students and people to start creating stuff, and it's completely glass. So they have factories, they have like all those huge equipment and stuff that would make furniture out of glass. And so they're trying to find people and students to go there and experiment and try to create things, but there's no one, and no one knows about them. So I think if we have a database of such factories, if we can facilitate creating a discipline or a study of product design, etc., then we'll be able to move on to the next step. But until now, I don't think it's not going to happen for the next 5 years, I think.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming. The speakers will be around if you wanted to come up afterwards and have a conversation, but thank you all.